Hello and welcome to the Vanessa Eriksson podcast. I'm Vanessa, your host, and I'm here to bring you meaningful conversations with leaders and influencers on data, AI, innovation, and leadership. Kasper Tjørntved Davidsen is a Nordic leader and known for driving large-scale digital transformations. I had the honor of working with him while I served as Chief Data Officer at Nets Group, and he Chief Technical Officer, responsible for modernizing the critical payment infrastructure. He later moved on to Top Denmark as CIO, where he introduced one of the first fully Gen AI-driven customer service solutions in the insurance sector. Today, Kasper is the Chief AI Officer at Danske Bank, where he leads the bank's push towards becoming a truly AI-first organization. Danske Bank has rolled out over a dozen Gen AI solutions to its thousands of employees. We're going to go behind that transformation. Let's begin. Kasper, welcome.
Thanks, V.
Thank you for having us here. We're at the Danske Bank in Copenhagen and talking to Kasper, the Chief AI Officer. Kasper, my first question, why does the Danske Bank need a Chief AI Officer? What is broken or too slow if they don't have this role?
Yeah, I think that it's a very good question. I think I'm a little biased in answering it, right? So probably I'll try to stay nuanced. I think if you look at companies, specifically larger organizations who understand that something's really happening in the market that we need to take care of, and AI as a technology and as a capability, a few, but a very lucky few companies have figured out that this is something we need to invest in. We need to understand it. Yeah. And we need to have somebody who actually takes that agenda seriously and works with it with intent. We can't rely on everybody else to do the work for us. We have to kind of have it narrowed in and be laser focused. And one of the ways to do that is by having people such as myself coming in, helping and be that lens that helps focus all the light into a singular or multiple places. So I think if you want to be extremely ambitious with the agenda, you also have to have a place where you can put the mandate and where you can put the responsibility, because otherwise, you're going to ask 100 or 1,000 people to do the work. And I think there's something around the saying that if you split the responsibility, then nobody has responsibility.
Agree. Yeah. But when the board hired you, what problem did they ask you to solve in one sentence?
Take us from adoption to value capture.
Nice.
Yeah. That's the real issue. That's I think, what a lot of companies currently are struggling with is moving away from that space where a lot of usage is being done, and you have all these metrics of adoption, but you don't really have the ROI. You don't have the budget changes to actually tangibly prove that you're doing something different on the basis of AI. And I think that's the unlock. That once you can do that, then the world's your oyster in terms of AI.
What did you learn from Top GPT at Top Denmark that you're now applying here at Danske Bank on a bigger canvas?
Yeah, and Top GPT was a fantastic learning opportunity. The first Gen AI robot in the insurance sector in Europe, and the first one in the financial sector in Denmark. Probably even wider than that, but I don't have the data to kind of prove that. I think going into a pretty bold phase and saying, already back in March of 24, saying we don't just want to put AI into the productivity gains, we want to touch the customers. At that point in time, that was an incredibly bold statement to make, and even bolder thing to put into reality. Yeah. And I think that boldness, right, that taught me that if you can do things, right, you don't have to be bogged down by risk, you don't have to be bogged down by your own insecurities or uncertainties. You can go out there and you can make things happen by being bold, and bold probably even as a prerequisite for success. Because if you don't apply boldness and intent in what you're doing, then it's going to be a long journey to value. So you have to make those bold statements. And then I think just to maybe following it up, I learned that the customers, they really love it, right? Just like anybody else who engages with generative AI specifically, they feel much more heard and valued, and the conversations that they're having with AI are just multitudes better than old rule-based chatbots. So I learned that if you start with the customer, the rest will follow. And that's everything from increased revenue to decreased cost to just the customer satisfaction that will increase by having these opportunities.
That is wonderful. But let's paint the picture now. It's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, you're coming in. How are people using Gen AI tools?
At the bank?
Yeah.
So, we recently did a lot of surveys, and we also recently did a case study with just one of our use cases. Currently, the bank employs 20 plus Gen AI use cases in production. That's quite extraordinary. I don't think that there's a lot of companies, especially in Northern Europe, that does this. But I'll give you just one example, which is maybe one of the most relatable. Then we, of course, have a lot of other stuff. We've employed our own Danske GPT. Now, I'm a little hesitant in using that as an example because that's kind of entry-level work. But what it does is that it exemplifies quite well how the 10 in the morning looks at the bank. So 25% of the entire organization, they use Danske GPT on a daily basis.
Okay.
Yeah, and across of an entire week, it's almost 3/4 of everybody. So 76% or so that uses it, and they do it for basically anything. It's to help them code. It's to help them create solution designs, reference architectures. It's to have a companion and a sparring partner when they need to solve issues, just like you would with any other LLM on the internet that you could engage with, or a co-pilot. And you can also embed it so that you can put in your pictures, you can have conversations on the information, and you can have this canvas thing, we call it, where you can actually put in your work in multiple screens. So it's a sparring partner, it's a natural tool, very much to the tune of PowerPoint or Excel or any other tool basically that we have available for us.
That's wonderful. But I'm guessing with all those, there might have been some that didn't go completely into production, right? Because,
sure.
Yeah. Which case really surprised you with the return of investment?
I think that one of the things I get quoted the most when I do presentations or keynotes is somebody will raise their hand and then quote the MIT study of saying, or was it a Harvard? Yeah, 95% of everything fails. Yeah. And how do you kind of deal with that? From our point of view, what we're seeing is that we have very, very high success rates. And when I try to answer why that's the case, is because we have a very firm structure in how we do it. So from an innovation point of view, from a value capture point of view, from a value estimate point of view, and from an adoption point of view, we have this rigorous process so that once we quantify a use case, we actually have a very high success rate in terms of bringing it into production. So I think that we differ a little bit in that space, which also means that a lot of the use cases that we have, they have quite fantastic ROIs. Now, it's interesting how you then determine the ROI. Is it time? Is it productivity increase? Do you take the money out? How do you do it? For us at the bank, we've opted to look at it holistically, currently with the existing portfolio, but as we mature, it will be much more select in terms of, do we collect the coin, do we reinvest the coin, or what do we do with the added benefits? I think where we are seeing definitely the most impact is when you have large volumes of information you need to manually understand and handle. And that's actually across of a lot of different things that we do at the bank. It can be anything from the way that we understand applications to certain things, or it can be when we need to process and understand our customers. And sometimes you can have a case handler sitting with 500 or 1,000 pages of information, structured and unstructured, that they need information with and checked against hundreds of standard operating procedures. We can use our agentic AI capabilities to cut that down to a very small amount of time. Of course, within all the safety protocols and recommendations and so on and so forth.
I'm thinking, what foundations, because we talked about the risk, being bold. I like being bold. But what then needs to be in place? Because quality, AI can deal a lot with the quality, the data quality. Sure. So what then needs to be in place? Is it, what do you start with? Is it the data? Is it the governance? Is the cloud?
I think, we have certain non-negotiables.
Yeah.
And they very much center around risk and compliance. So we've actually, we have a separate department that we call responsible AI, which is the people that we dedicate to making sure that from a model risk management point of view, from a data quality point of view, from an output of all the models that we employ, that lives up to the standards and risks that we want to accept.
Yeah.
And to make sure that handshake goes on across the organization, from the ones building the solutions to the ones that are needing to sign off on those solutions and the risk associated with that. So it varies from solution to solution in terms of what the non-negotiables are. Yeah. But for us specifically, we want to make sure that you build on reference, that you always compliant to any legislation out there. Those two are probably the biggest.
From a bank perspective.
From a bank point of view.
For the CIOs and the CTOs that are perhaps watching this episode, what would you say to them are the two non-negotiables? Well, risk is always a number one, right?
Risk is one of them, right? But you have to handle risk. Yeah. Everything you do in life is risky, right?
Absolutely.
So it's if you don't find a way to navigate that or mitigate it to a point where you feel comfortable accepting it, then you're gonna have to find probably a new job. Yeah. Because at some point you do have to deal with this. But I think in terms of non-negotiables, there are so many things that comprise a working operating model for employing AI. I would probably navigate towards the technology piece of it, because, well, for us as a bank, we're at that point in time now where we've been dealing with this for a couple of years now. We have, again, multiple solutions in place. And if we want to scale that even to a strategic point of view, where we not only create use cases, but we create tangible change within the organization, and where we potentially in the future want to redefine how we do core services based on AI, you have to have standards, you have to have governance, you have to have as singular reference architecture as you can reliably get towards, because you have to deal with the multitude of agents and new solutions being put in place, and that has to fit in some sort of framework. Yeah. So I think my best advice in that space is to say, understand and define in what technology direction you want to move, so that you have singular ecosystems to work in, and not end up with the concept of mushrooming, technology mushrooming, or agentic mushrooming for that matter.
Yeah. And for me, what you said is kind of the foundation, getting all your governance in place, and yes, it's just the foundations that. But
I also find that it's very difficult for companies to spend the time in accepting that they have to invest in that. Yeah. So I find a lot of companies they do these use cases, maybe not wholeheartedly. Yeah. So they do them a little bit, half, and then they expect returns. And then when they don't see the returns, and when they can't collect the coins, then they get discouraged, and then they feel like they're at the the top of the hype cycle, and they're on the fast way going down. Yeah. But you do have to invest some money in your belief system that this is the future, and then put in the structure and the governance to have it become scalable. Yeah. Because your real value will be when you scale it. Yeah. It's not going to be the individual use cases, it's going to when you redefine the core processes of your company. Agreed. So there is an investment and a belief system that you need to tap into before collecting the coins, I think.
Yeah. You're in a very highly regulated space. Yeah. And we talked about risk, but how do you roll out Gen AI to 16,000 employees or more without waking up with in front of the regulator?
Yeah, it's many things, right? We do a lot of things. So of course we have a literal army of people who make sure that we adhere to any legislation and governance and compliance that we have to do, and that spans every conceivable concept that you can put into your mind. If I ignore all the hard things that can be expected of a bank to do, which we of course do, and maybe touch a little bit more on the cultural thing, the bank is actually investing quite heavily into the people. And you avoid getting in trouble with regulators if you can also have qualified people with a significant amount of competencies operating the systems, because otherwise you'll get a different type of issue. So we spend a lot of time also listening to the EU AI Act, making sure that the AI literacy from all of our 20,000 employees is at an acceptable level, which we raise every single year. So we don't just put in, the mandatory training, of which of course there's a lot in the bank, but we raise the floor every single year because we expect people and ourselves to become more and more mature.
Yeah, but I'm curious then, Kasper, is there no, because you'll always have, a kind of people that have a little bit of pushback on this.
Oh, yeah.
How do you deal with that then?
I think pushback is expected, and I think that any technology advancement through time will have showed that when you need to change, that's not necessarily always good. No. But back to the point on the people, just a couple of months ago, we hosted the largest AI conference, I think, in Northern Europe. We had 8,000 individuals join across the whole week at the bank, where we spent thousands and thousands of hours together collectively, getting educated on what AI is, getting inspired, understanding what does it mean for us as employees, what does it mean for our customers, and what does it mean for the bank. And having those three lenses, we explored the opportunity space that AI brings, creating the excitement, encouragement, and the hands-on experience so that our employees get fueled with excitement and see the potential that the future brings, rather than being worried about what will happen. Of course, that's still there, but that's something we actively work with and encourage people to work through. Maybe one point on that is, it's very important for us to communicate that leveraging AI is not cheating. No. Right? It is actually providing faster value for yourself as an individual, while you upskill yourself as an individual for the tools of the future, while adding more value to the bank and then ultimately to the shareholders.
No, that's so. I mean, it's like it says, what I hear you saying, that Danske Bank is really the ambition is to be an AI first. So kudos, well done.
I think we have very high ambitions in that, and a large part in that goes, with credit to our CEO, Carsten Egeriis. He has a magnificent clarity of intent and clarity of vision in terms of where he wants to take the bank. And I think that's one of the core reasons why we will become and are successful with AI, is because his endorsement and his commitment to this and understanding of is, in my opinion, second to none.
Fantastic. So what model do you have then for your guardrails? Is it policy? Is it tech? Is it training? I mean, training is clearly. Is there a lot of policies as well that go along?
We have a wide range of policies. So of course, training is your ticket to even get access to the tool. So you have to pass the course with a test to just get access to the tools. It's that hardcore. And then of course, from a technology point of view, we employ all the tech guardrails that you would imagine, meaning that we only allow the certain amount of and certain types of interactions with AI that we find we're comfortable with for the select people that we want to have that type of access. So we employ guardrails along everything we do, but of course also in the solutions themselves. So we build in our own guardrails and safety mechanisms to make sure that the output of the models that we employ lives up to the standard, but also to make sure that the human in the loop is always present.
Yeah, but then how do you measure success, Kasper?
Well, I think it comes to a wide range. So I think there's some hard metrics and there's some soft metrics. If we start with the hard ones, every single use case that we work on or with, that has to have a value attached to it, and that has to be signed off by the business. Okay. So nobody gets to do anything unless somebody says that it has value. And then we go in and we prove the value, and then we scale the solution. Nice. So it has to have a tangible outcome. But if you look at it from a more soft point of view, I look at how many use cases we have in the backlog, how many ideas come in from the organization. And that is probably, in my opinion, maybe even the best measurement of success, because if I see continuously new ideas coming in, people being inspired, and the technical level within those use cases, as that rises, going from simple AI assistants to agentic workflows into agentic orchestration. As that maturity increases, I'm also seeing an organization that begins to solve more and more complicated, or wants to solve more and more complicated tasks with AI. And that's a pretty cool measurement of success.
Very nice, very nice. I think at least when you got the whole company working together with you and not against, that has to be a win.
It has to be like that, otherwise it's never going to work.
No.
This is, and it has to be co-creation. Yeah.
I want to talk a little about your role, because there's not many companies that have officially announced a chief AI officer. Who are your partners internally? The immediate ones that you work with.
I think I'm in that both fortunate but also tough situation where I have to partner with everybody. Yeah. So my key stakeholders range from the business owners themselves, right? Because they're my primary customers. They have to, be excited about the opportunities of AI and then want to use the services that I can help provide with them. So I don't do it all by myself. Of course, we work across. But then, of course, the chief data officer, right? A role you know very well. But also, the chief technology officer and the chief security officer. The foundational capabilities of an organization that needs to match as well, because implementing hundreds, maybe thousands of agents in the future, we need to have the frameworks in place. We need to have the data platforms in place. We need to have the right security and access frameworks in place, running on the right infrastructure in reference, in unison. That's a pretty tough thing to create, right?
Yeah.
But if you can do it, then you're also in a position to really scale the organization, because you can basically import all their use cases and put it into a standardized operating model. That's the hope, at least, and where we're working towards.
No, I can imagine, because you have to have this kind of foundational level of the security, of the tech, of the data in place. So yeah.
And then maybe one last one, that would be the CEO, and of course the executive leadership team. But that's the business in my terminology. I spend a significant amount of time together with the CEO, and he challenges us, and of course us the other way around. But you need to have access to all the layers of an organization, and back to the point of having the top of the house being committed to the journey is an absolutely very key in terms of achieving success.
You talk very highly of your CEO. Yeah. What do you expect from him or from the CTO to make this real? I mean, the commitment, the collaboration,
the challenge.
The challenge, yes.
I think, in a lot of technology spaces, or when you work with something that is relatively niche, you oftentimes have the upper hand in terms of understanding the foundations of the topic that you're discussing more than your C-suite or your CEO. I think in our case specifically, we have a CEO who is extremely interested in how things work. He's also the previous chief risk officer, so he has a lot of insight into how things work. And him understanding and wanting to understand at a fairly deep level how things operate lends a tremendous depth to the conversations that you can have, because he also understands the nuances of what it is that we're trying to achieve. And I think that's and with that comes challenge, right? Yeah. Because you don't get to just skirt over the issue, right? You will be.
You need the details.
5 questions deep.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. What did you learn about reskilling? I mean, there's a lot, like you said, these events that you've had for the entire organization. What have you learned from reskilling all the employees?
I think there's one reality in terms of talent and skills that we all have to accept, that is, you'll never go out there and get all the people that you want. No. It's not going to happen, and that's a problem that's going to compound every single month. As more and more companies, they understand that this is the future, they will go out and they will do whatever they can to hire people, and talent will be a scarcity in the next foreseeable future. So you have to operate with, of course, attracting talent, but at the same time raising the bar and the baseline of the people who work with you, because otherwise you're also creating a two-speed competency level. So it's both, of course, new talent and expertise talent that you have to find somewhere, but then also working with the talent that you have and making sure that they are fit for purpose.
But I'm sure that the people, the employees, appreciate all the effort that the bank is putting into them.
We're making concerted efforts to tell them that we want them to be the best that they can be, and that we also believe that by providing them these tools, we're increasing their value in market.
Yes, indeed.
I think, I typically or personally feel that if in the future, in 2 years' time or 3 years' time, you're hiring somebody and they have had the opportunity to work with AI tools, then probably most likely that person will have an edge.
Yes.
Now, interestingly enough, that also goes the other way around for companies.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's two companies trying to hire talent, and one company is providing tools and the other company is not providing AI
Absolutely.
tools.
We know which one you're going to pick.
Exactly, right? So it goes both ways. So it's yeah.
But what do you see any roles that you're hiring today that did not exist 2 years ago?
Oh, definitely. I mean, and we can come back to the whole data science and machine learning capabilities that we've had for decades, which very much still is alive and well and interacts very generously with generative AI. I think what we're seeing now are developers who have specific understandings of agentic workflows and agentic orchestration as fundamentals for their development needs. Mm-hmm. You can go and hire Gen AI specialists or conversational specialists, but it's more and more becoming commodity based, which means that a very good developer is oftentimes all you need, right? With the right mindset and the right skills associated with that. Because you're getting so good tools now that it's not, you don't need to be, I mean, just a couple of years ago, if you wanted to build an agent, you would have to have, some very good Python developers that can do it for you. Now, you have multiple tools that you can leverage and create what you need.
Yeah. What a journey it has been, right? What's the one AI capability that you think every bank will have in 3 years that they don't have today?
In 3 years?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to go with something that's maybe a little, I don't know if it's controversial, but I don't hear a lot of people say it. I think that the bank and the whole banking sector in general is employing a significant amount of people to assert and ensure controls across of the organization. What I think will happen in 3 years' time is that we will have created agents that are working, around the clock, capable of being embedded into every single meeting, look at every single document, have access to data as we give it, and be capable of keeping us all to the promises that we've made each other and to market and to regulators. It's the concept of digital personas that I think is going to take off within the very next short period of time. We're already beginning to see companies, create these personas or specialized agents that you basically invite into your Teams meeting or whatever you have, and then they engage with you. And I think that's going to be the future. I think a whole range or slew of digital personas will be just operating in the bank 24/7. Yeah.
How cool! Yeah. And what's the one thing that in AI that you think banks are still getting wrong?
That risk cannot be managed. I think that's still the spinal cord reaction for a lot within the financial sector, is that we don't have the tools or the abilities to handle the risk that of course is there. I think that's a misconception. I think that we have the tools. I think we have the capabilities. We have the technology.
That is so positive. That's a really good positive note.
Well,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And for my last question, complete the sentence. A serious company in 2026 that wants to win with AI must
work with intent and clarity of vision.
Thank you.
Thank you, V.
Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did and learned as much as I did. Thank you all for joining. And thank you, Kasper, once again. So cool to be here in your offices.
Thank you for the invitation.
Bye for now.